On February 21st, 1965, a man walked into the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem to give a speech. He was 39 years old. He had survived prison, poverty, and persecution. He had reshaped an entire movement. And he had just begun to reveal who he was truly becoming. He never made it off that stage. Malcolm X was shot 21 times. Shot in front of his wife, shot in front of his daughters, shot while his body was still being protected by men he'd recently left behind. According to FBI records and court documents released decades later, the assassination happened with suspicious timing, minimal police presence, and deliberate obstruction by law enforcement. No justice, no accountability, just silence and questions that remain unanswered nearly 60 years later. But here's what they don't want you to understand about Malcolm X. His life wasn't about his death. It was about his transformation. Born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska, he lost his father to white supremacists before he could even remember him. The Black Legion murdered his father in 1931, and the state refused to prosecute. His mother was institutionalized. He was placed in foster care. By his teens, he was on the streets. By 21, he was in prison. This is the man they write off as angry. They ignore what made him angry. They ignore that his anger was a rational response to systematic dehumanization. In prison, Malcolm discovered Islam. He discovered discipline. He discovered the Nation of Islam, and under Elijah Muhammad's leadership, he became one of the most powerful voices in America. According to the National Museum of African American History and Culture, Malcolm X brought tens of thousands of new members to the Nation of Islam. He was fierce. He was uncompromising. He preached black nationalism. He said, "By any means necessary," and millions heard him. Then in April 1964, he did something that terrified both his enemies and his allies. He evolved. Malcolm X made the pilgrimage to Mecca. According to his own letter written from Mecca and preserved in Islamic historical archives, he stood among Muslims from every nation, every race, every color, all praying to the same God. For the first time in his life, he wrote, "I have eaten from the same plate, drunk from the same glass, and slept on the same rug with fellow Muslims whose eyes were the bluest of blue, whose hair was the blondest of blonde, and whose skin was the whitest of white." He signed that letter, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. He was reborn. He returned to America with a new vision. Not black separatism, not hatred of white people, but a commitment to human rights, international human rights. He founded the Organization of Afro-American Unity. He began building bridges to African liberation movements. He began articulating a vision so vast, so dangerous to power structures that his own former allies issued death threats. On February 14, 1965, 1 week before his assassination, someone firebombed his home while his pregnant wife and 4 young daughters slept inside. They escaped. He told reporters, "I live like a man who is dead already." 7 days later, his prophecy came true. 3 men rushed the stage. Bullets tore through his chest, his shoulders, his legs, 21 gunshot wounds. The autopsy documented it. The autopsy acknowledged it, but the investigation buried it. 2 of the 3 men convicted were exonerated in 2021 after serving decades in prison, exonerated because the government withheld evidence. The real assassins? Still protected, still unnamed. The conspiracy? Still denied. What they couldn't kill was his legacy. Malcolm X's evolution from rage to vision, from separatism to universal human rights, from Nation of Islam minister to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, became the blueprint for every freedom fighter that came after. His autobiography, written with Alex Haley, sold millions of copies. His words inspired the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights era, liberation struggles across Africa, and activist movements that continue today. Here's what makes Malcolm X dangerous even in death. He proves that transformation is possible. that a man can be radically wrong and then radically right. That conviction paired with willingness to learn is unstoppable. That the price of becoming your truest self is often your life. This Black History Month, when we celebrate his legacy, we need to ask harder questions. Who had him killed? Who covered it up? Why were the men protecting him suddenly absent? Why does the government still refuse to release all files related to his death? Why does it take 56 years for the truth to begin emerging? And most importantly, if they murdered him for evolving into someone even more dangerous than he was before, what does that tell us about the power of growth? About the terror that transformation instills in systems built on keeping us divided? Malcolm X didn't just change history. He proved that we can change too. That's why they couldn't let him live to see it. El-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz. Remember that name. Not as a martyr to mourn, but as a warrior who evolved. A man who studied, who learned, who grew, who refused to accept that his past defined his future, and who was killed for daring to build bridges instead of walls.